The Night Side continues with host Barb DiGiulio on NewsTalk 1010.
Great to have you along. You heard John's story, if you were listening in the last half hour, about his bitter divorce and his experience with the Family Responsibility Office that he is very disappointed with and feels like they ruin people's lives and they've been very unfair to him. And we wanted to have Rick Patica on, family law lawyer at Shulman Family Law. First of all, Rick, thank you for joining us. I assume you listened to some of what John had to say.
Well, hi, Barb. Thank you for having me on your show. Yes, I did.
Of course. And I get the frustration. And I'm getting people texting in and saying things like the women always get everything in the divorce and the courts are on their side. And I don't know. First of all, maybe I'm jumping ahead because I wanted to get your reaction to John's situation.
Well, and again, it's hard for me to comment on John's specific situation. I don't know much of the facts, and a lot of the facts depend on both sides of the story. And we only heard one side, and obviously it would be important to see what his wife's position would be, and ultimately what a court determined. And I think one of the things that we want to take away is the FRO is an enforcement body, and they're enforcing a court order.
So somebody texted me, they work at the FRO. They said, we don't make the order, we just enforce it. So it's what the court is doing.
And that's correct, though. There's a finding by a court based on evidence that ultimately leads to a decision. And the FRO is given the mandate under the legislation to enforce it. So it's not, and I think I want to create a distinction because John was talking about them as if they're a judicial body.
Okay.
But they're not.
Okay.
They're just an enforcement mechanism that enforce child and spousal support court orders. And if there's an issue that a litigant has with an order, then there's certain remedies under the law that they can seek at the time to have that court order either reviewed under an appeal or under a motion to change, as he mentioned. So
I get just as many people who say it's not worth getting married, men always have to pay, and I get women who say, I have a spousal support order against my husband and he hasn't paid in forever, and the FRO just put him through the credit bureau. Look, nobody really wins in terms of feeling satisfied, I would assume, or a lot of people don't, when you have a divorce situation.
Again, it depends who you ask at the end of the day, Barb. But
okay, are the courts against men, in your opinion?
No, they're not, though. They're there to make rulings based on law and the evidence that's before them.
Are the rulings based usually on who is the higher earner in the relationship, and does it get balanced out? Is that sort of how it's done?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about spousal support, we're looking at a few factors. One including whether there's a compensatory element to it, whether the one spouse sacrificed their own career for the betterment of the other person's career, and that would cause an entitlement.
Can I take a couple quick calls since I've got you on the line, and some people are wanting to share their experiences? Hi, Charlie. Go ahead.
Barb, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for calling. Go ahead with your story.
Barb, my story is a little bit different. I have been off of work since November the 1st on depression and stress leave. I had EI just briefly up until April, and it was like $400 a month. I have been so behind in paying my ex-wife child support, but yet I have all my bills that I'm paying each month, but I have no income. And I'm lucky that my ex-wife is understanding because I suffer from depression. I just came back from Timmins from a 28-day addiction and depression clinic.
Okay.
And who's going to help me, Barb?
So, well, who is supposed to help you? Like, I'm not sure what you mean. Who is going to help you?
What I mean is that the government and the system doesn't help people who are suffering depression and can't even support themselves. Normally, people like myself, we're just not a statistic for suicide, Barb, because we have no income, we have no way of taking care of our kids, let alone ourselves.
Charlie, thanks a lot. I'm putting him on hold so he can hear you. Rick, I don't know. I mean, that's sort of bringing in another element because the mental health issue is something additional to what he might be going on with through a divorce.
And it might be, and again, we don't know that. But I guess the only thing is if there's a valid court order in place, and there's there's this change that he's experiencing with the onset of depression, then it should be put back before a court to determine whether that order should be reviewed.
And that person from the FRO who texted me said people can go back and get orders changed if something drastic does change in their own life.
That's correct. They have to show what's called a material change, and if they're able to show a material change, a court will vary the order.
Paul has been hanging on for quite a while. Paul, go ahead with your comment or your question.
Hi, Barb. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, I went through the exact same thing as John for almost 8 years with the FRO. A court order started it. I paid the spouse support for 4.5 to 5 years. My business went out of business. Eventually, the lawyers, it was, who do you pay first? The lawyers $5,000 a month or the FRO? And eventually they take your license away. They threaten to take your passport away. You can't work. If you work, they garnish 50% of your wage. The best thing for John is to settle with something. If you get the lawyers involved, you have to settle before you get the lawyers involved, because eventually you're fighting with the lawyers, the FRO, your wife, your family. I lost my family. I end up by myself after it all. And it was a complete disaster. I end up with legal aid at the end of it all.
Paul, thank you for your call. Rick, would you agree that if people can settle amicably, they're better off than having to pay lawyers? I mean, you guys don't want to make people go broke in order to settle their issues?
Well, generally, the first approach should be to try to settle amicably outside of court. And if a case is inside of court, then it's either because one or both partners are being unreasonable to one another, and that's the reason why they're before a court to determine their dispute.
You know, I have so much compassion and so much sympathy for people who tell us stories like this, but I also feel like if they could settle amongst themselves, it's not like they have to pay lawyers. They're paying lawyers because they cannot make an agreement with the person they used to be married to.
And that's correct, Barb. A lot of cases settle outside of court. And the fact, probably almost the majority of cases settle outside of court, but the few percentage that are in court, let's say, it almost comes across that it's normative.
Rick, we're out of time, unfortunately, because we've got a lot of people calling in. Maybe we'll pick this up again another night. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Barb. Have
Rick,
a great evening.
You too. Rick Patik, a family law lawyer at Shulman Family Law. I have to tell you, I know someone whose lawyer said to them, can you try to settle this? Maybe someone can help you try to settle this, because you're just going to keep us paying money and you guys just want to keep fighting with each other. Look, there are a million different stories and circumstances, and I don't know every lawyer in the city. I know a handful of them, but the ones I know don't want people to go broke. They're there. They need to be there for a certain part of it, but they also have sometimes told people, you're just wasting your money because you guys are not going to get any closer to an agreement. I'm sorry, and I have so much sympathy, and nobody should have to go through this. And I hate to see it happen to people. I thank those of you who shared your stories. Sorry we didn't have time to get to the rest, and we will try to revisit this situation another night. Do appreciate it. You're listening to The Night Side.
The fight at Sick Kids is our fight, and we are winning. 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 And we